Economic development was an issue that you had mentioned was discussed there. Was Indian gaming a relevant issue?
Actually, it wasn't. It was not. It really wasn't a substantive issue because there were successes there. Where there was discussions about, for example, green energy and renewable energies, how tribes can participate in that. And here's one good example of is that tribes have properties or reservations or territories that actually have pretty good wind rate for windmills. But there's barriers in developing that because they're in rural areas, transmission lines, and so how do tribes work with transmission companies to deliver that green power? And how do tribes have the same advantages that a private entrepreneur would to put in a wind farm? For example, if you're a private entrepreneur, you get a 30% tax credit for putting in a wind farm, but tribes don't. So why not provide the tribes the same parity there in terms of a capital acquisition grant or such, rather than a tax credit? So those are some kinds of the issues that can be resolved, but it's going to take legislative action. Law enforcement was very important. Insufficient number of law enforcement personnel in tribal areas, resulting in not only property crimes but human crimes, rates of rape and child abuse were high. And so the idea of very seriously funding the necessary law enforcement was discussed a lot.
Really, within law enforcement, what you all are seeking is to have more, better jurisdiction within law enforcement, to have some rules changed.
Yes, and actually better coordination. For example, tribes have generally jurisdiction over Indians who commit crimes upon Indians, but not jurisdiction over white folks that commit crimes on Indians. Basically, it's the federal government that has to prosecute this kind of rape cases. So if the U.S. Attorney and the FBI or the U.S. Marshal will not aggressively enforce those crimes, they go unpunished. And so it's not only a function of money, but it's a function of priority with federal agencies.
And really, with some of those issues that you've talked about with child abuse and with rape, how do you even go about making some changes?
Well, the best way to do it is grant tribes jurisdiction over everybody in their territory. And we had that authority 150 years ago, that if you're in Indian country, you subjected yourself to criminal prosecution. The general public don't think would like that these days. And so we have to have a more aggressive enforcement by the federal government, the FBI, cross designations, U.S. attorneys. And there's one good example is in Claremore, who has primary criminal jurisdiction over the Indian hospital in Claremore, was the U.S. attorney. So if there's a domestic conflict on the property there, who responds? Well, you have to have somebody from the FBI come from Tulsa to deal with that. So if we had jurisdiction there, we could have our law enforcement, we could be cross-deputized with the city of Claremore or the Rogers County Sheriff's Office, provide instant response to a domestic assault or possibly a theft of the pharmaceuticals, class 3 pharmaceuticals, heavy drugs from the emergency room. Those are examples of where jurisdiction is an issue, and cooperation with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney is critical.